Good evening. I'm Chris Turner, and I am here to talk to you a little bit more practically about flood survival tips. Not really an expert in water issues per se, other than that there was a flood in Calgary last year and I survived it, so that's my credentials for this talk. So let me tell you a little bit what I learned and what the city learned. And let's start actually by going back a few years to 2009. You're looking at a photo of me standing in front of my house the day my wife and I decided to put an offer on it. And really, what's in this picture is everything that made us want this house. We had a fantastic walkable street in a great neighborhood, close to all kinds of amenities. I do know quite a bit about urban sustainability, or I like to think I do, and this is, about a sustainable neighborhood, 100-year-old trees, one of the oldest neighborhoods in Calgary. And that's really all we were thinking about when we decided this ticked all the boxes, let's buy this place. If you get another look at our house, indicated by the little Google dot there, you get a clearer sense. Still a lot to like about this, great mixed-use urbanism, all that kind of stuff. On some level, when we looked at this picture, deciding to buy this house, we realized, yes, this is a house on a floodplain. We are buying property on a floodplain. But that really wasn't, the operative moment. A 100-year floodplain, the 100-year-old poplar tree. Surely, whatever's going to happen, this street has seen it before, and it'll do just fine. This, of course, is what the Bow River looked like on the evening of June 20th as it neared its crest during that flood. This is 250 meters from my house. I took these pictures. The top photo, normally, there's about 2 stories of clearance under that bridge. As you can see, we're down to about 5 feet, and there's still a lot of rain to come. The lovely bike pathway, which is part of the reason why we liked living in the neighborhood, is, of course, completely inundated by this point. The local state of emergency has already been declared. And this all happened very, very quickly, even though it was predictable. Even though we lived on a floodplain, I'm telling you, this is your first flood survival tip. You do not see it coming. You absolutely do not see it coming. Later that evening, just a few hours after those photos were taken, this is what I had to do to the front door of my house as I evacuated it and moved to higher ground. You put the X on the door so that the police know they don't have to come and clear out the house and make sure there's no one there. You do not see this coming. This is medieval. This is biblical. This is a sign of the plague. This is the wrath of an Old Testament God that you're attesting to at this point. And this is your second flood survival tip. When you have to X out your door at midnight on a quiet June evening, trust me, all the logic you have in your head falls completely away like a riverbank that you thought would be there forever. You stare completely into the abyss all the way down. Your mind unspools all these sort of disaster movie scenarios, newsreel footage of Bangladesh and New Orleans, and you wonder, where does this leave me? And the one thing you know, and this is another flood survival tip, is that you are not in control. You never were. Water is. Nature is. It gets the last word. Its word is final. At midnight on the evening of June 20th, it told me, get out, and so I did. And of course, we all woke the next day to this scene, which you've already seen a picture of. What you're looking at is the most expensive natural disaster in Canadian history. $6 billion in damage, $2 billion of it insurable, or nearly $2 billion of it insurable. And this whole scene was absolutely workaday normal, not 24 hours before this picture was taken. You could drive up the hill from this scene, I did, and find a city that was more or less continuing as normal. People going to their jobs if they didn't work downtown, which of course have been completely evacuated. People going about their business, going to the shopping mall, that sort of thing. And so that's another flood survival tip, is that the distance between normal and as far from normal as your city has ever been can be measured in just a few blocks. And in fact, this is just a few blocks from my house. This is 4A Street. I live on 10A Street, so you can do the math. It's 6 blocks from my house. A neighborhood called Sunnyside, which obviously was severely inundated by the flood. You cross the LRT tracks 5 blocks away, and it becomes a neighborhood called Hillhurst. And I don't know if you know what a Hillhurst is. I do, because I Googled it the day that I discovered that my street for some reason was still dry, despite this scene. A Hurst is a hillock or wooded rise at the base of a hill in this case, Hillhurst. And that tiny little bit of a rise is the reason why my neighbors lost everything in their basements, damages that would take weeks, if not months, if not years to deal with, and I was just fine. So that's how short a distance between normal and nothing at all like normal you undergo in a flood. This is what the whole thing looked like. Obviously, the normal flow of the Bow and Elbow rivers, and then that wide blue swath is the flood. The red arrow indicates my house, more or less. The rest of downtown Calgary, of course, was a mess. 100,000 people evacuated. LRT tunnels inundated, businesses and homes ruined, all the stuff that made the headlines. It was a once-in-a-century catastrophe, as we understood, unless, of course, as we are growing to understand, this was not an extreme anomaly, but maybe a new kind of normal emerging. And so here's a flood survival tip that we learned in Calgary. We got very, very lucky. It could have been much, much worse. Here's just one sort of data point. On the evening of June 20th, it got cold in the foothills of the Rockies. It had been raining and raining and raining on snowpack, which, of course, is kind of like a doubling down of a flood. You've got the rain falling, and then it's melting snow and adding to the drainage basin. It got cold enough that water on the evening of the 20th fell as snow for a little while. It slowed down the inundation for a little while. Had it not been for that slight respite, would my house have been underwater? Probably, at least partially. That's how thin that line is. And so really, you're never very far on either side of the line until you're absolutely over it. To give it an even wider picture, this is what the sort of event that happened in Calgary looks like to the global reinsurance industry. The reinsurance industry is basically the global experts in risk management, the people who insure the insurers who pay out the money. The top curve is the last 30 years of natural disasters. The bottom curve takes geophysical events like volcanoes and earthquakes out of the picture and just looks at water and weather events. And as you can see, a very, very steep uphill climb. There is absolutely no question as far as the reinsurance industry is concerned. This is an age of extreme weather caused by climate change in one way or another. And so when you look at that, you are looking at a chalk outline, I suppose you could say, of the new normal. And we are looking at it, all of us, right here on the Fraser River Delta, very, very close to an ocean that we know will continue to rise for decades to come. And so that's another flood survival tip. Calgary's catastrophe last year is your crisis tomorrow. How ready are you for that crisis? Calgary, it turned out, was not too bad as far as readiness goes. It was chaos, but as chaos goes, it was actually quite a jovial and sort of genial chaos. And this picture kind of captures that. That's a firefighter by the name of Sean Wiebe carrying a woman to safety. And part of the reason why Calgary weathered the flood about as well as you can weather a disaster of that scale is for one key reason, and it was because we'd had a sneak preview in 2005. We'd had a major flood of the Elbow River, and more than that, we had a city manager, Owen Tobert, who was so scared by what he saw in the 2005 flood that he demanded the city make some major changes to the way we think about flooding. If I can get back to it. There we go. This is the Emergency Operations Center that opened in 2012 in direct response to the 2005 flood, a state-of-the-art facility. At the 2005 flood, they were recording water volumes on whiteboards. Now they had real-time data. They had the center that was a bit like a NASA space management center. And it was seen as maybe, going too far. Did we really need this much? And the tendency when a disaster happens is to manage the next crisis based on the last one. The great thing that Owen Tobert did was convince the city, no, we need to manage for the next bigger disaster. We need to put in place a couple of key changes in how we do things. The center itself was one piece of that, but the even bigger piece was that he recognized we needed to start planning for recovery even as we were planning for disaster. This is a great example of the limits of how much you can plan for. This is 8th Avenue in Inglewood, just east of downtown. This is the Saturday after the flood. The waters have started to recede. People are starting to pump out their basements. Business already getting back to normal, except that the bank in front of this house is falling away and falling away. And so they called the Emergency Operations Center. It happened to be that the Army had just arrived from Edmonton, was sent in to basically inundate that bank with concrete and keep it from eroding before the entire street fell into the Bow River. And this is what happened. If you check this on Google Maps today, you'll still see this picture of a fundamentally different river from before June 21st, 2013. Where the red line is on this picture is what is no longer there. That land is gone. It washed away in the flood of 2013. And so as a thought experiment, understand that you do, in fact, live on a street just like this one, where the river is coming at you and then meanders slowly by and around the bend. It's always done so, and it will continue to always do so until it doesn't, until it comes straight at you, and the Army may or may not be there to stop the erosion of the bank before your house falls into the river. That is where we all live now, in an age of climate change and an age of extreme weather. And so that really is the last flood survival tip from Calgary is, how ready are we? Nobody was more ready for the Calgary flood, and he's sort of the symbol, I think, of what we need to do to get ready. This is Sparky, the hippo at the Calgary Zoo. Sparky responded to the Calgary flood the way he responds to any water event, simply by enjoying the fact that there was more water around. He didn't actually find out. He could have swum right out into the Bow River. There was an egress out into the river, and he never noticed it until they had time to kind of rebuild some of his enclosure. But until we are all able to look at that next extreme weather event the way Sparky did as another interesting variation on a pretty good day, we're not fully ready to deal with the scale of change and the scale of disaster that we know, absolutely know, is still coming for us. It's coming for Calgary. It's coming for every city in this country, and very few of these cities are ready to deal with it. So that is really, I think, the final lesson, which is more of a question from the Calgary flood. How ready are you to deal with this? Thank you.